This is the good and downside of starting an agency is you can do it with next to nothing. As long as you've got a computer, you can start an agency.
One of the things I always tell people about being an entrepreneur is like the greatest thing about it is the autonomy, freedom, and then the limitless of potential.
This massive project. Don't ask me how we landed this thing, but we're talking near $1 million project. We are going to screw this up, get sued our socks off, and probably end up in prison. We end up saying, like, I guess we've got to do this.
Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. Welcome back to The Friday Habit. If you're struggling to find your purpose in business and tired of limping along from referral to referral, today's episode is for you. We've got my friend Russel Dubree on the show. Russell's the founder of Performance Faction, a business coach, a former agency owner who had a monster exit, and he's dedicated to helping marketing agency leaders like yourself craft their own success stories and be more successful. Russell, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mark, man. Props, greatest intro ever, by the way. That's wicked awesome, dude.
Let's go. Dude, how have you been? It's been a few weeks since we saw each other and chatted.
I know. It's been awesome. You know, Thanksgiving in between, a few pounds heavier.
Yeah, how was your Thanksgiving? I know you like to cook, so I, too, myself, dabble in the culinary arts.
Yes.
And so how did you do your turkey?
I'm a pretty traditionalist, so just a straight roaster, but right, it's all in the brine. So I get everything I want out of a good solid brine.
All right. Well, listen,
how do you do it?
Dude, I doubled up this year. I did 2 turkeys because we were hosting. We had like 20 people. And so do you know what a big green egg is? It's a smoker.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I got a big green egg. So I injected one with butter and Cajun seasoning and rubbed Cajun seasoning all over it. And then I smoked it out on the smoker. And then I took another turkey and I spatchcock it. It's where you cut out the spine, lay it flat on a roasting pan. And then I did like this garlic, rosemary, lemon zest, salt on the outside of it. Did a dry brine in the fridge overnight. And then roasted that one in the oven. And they both turned out amazing. But the smoked one, everyone was just like, next level. You have to do this every year. And I'm like, all right.
I'm curious, is it the flavor or is it the injection? What's the secret? What makes that one better?
Yeah, I think it's the flavor for sure. Because, just turkey, I think grabs onto that smoke real nice. And I don't even add extra wood chips or any type of other, because, you don't want it to be too smoky. Like a brisket, you can kind of pump with the extra wood and all that kind of stuff. And it turns out fine and not too smoky because it's just such a thick piece of meat. But with turkey, I think I've had some smoked turkeys where it was like over smoked. It was like too smoky. It's like you're eating an ashtray. It's like, all right, we've crossed the line here. And so with this one, I just used the lump charcoal, and that's kind of one of the things I like about the big green egg is a little bit more temperamental. Like you have to be into it because most of my friends have the Traegers, set it and forget it. You put the thing, but then I feel like there's 2 things wrong with the Traeger. One is it can't get hot enough. So like I can get my big green egg to like 1,000 degrees and like sear some steaks on there. They even have like pizza oven attachments so that you can cook pizzas on there if you wanted to. But then also I can get it really low, like 250, 200. And just kind of let it sit. And then I feel like lump charcoal just has a way better flavor and smoke to it than pellets. Pellets can only kind of produce so much smoke.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just feel like I get great results. Like I said, you have to be into it because you have to like be monitoring your temperature and then open and close these wind or air vents in order to dial it in perfectly. Are you a Traeger guy?
No, I'm actually.
I don't mean to stomp on your Traeger if you have one.
No. I got a good friend with Traeger. So do most of my grilling. I'm actually not a meat smoker guy at all.
Are you a vegetarian?
No, not a meat smoker.
Okay,
I got
good.
the old classic Weber kettle is where I do a lot of my stuff on.
Okay.
I had a Big Green Egg for a hot minute, and I really feel like I didn't do myself justice in mastering all that was the potential in the Big Green Egg. So maybe I'll have to get one again sometime.
Yeah, it's definitely a culture. There's a whole ecosystem, and like dudes who have dudes who have Big Green Eggs, they're kind of snobby. They're elitist. It's like, oh, I have a Big Green Egg. I love the aesthetics of it. Talk about branding and style. It's like it's got this 70s vibe to it, and it always is interesting, and especially when someone comes over in the summer and it's like out there, it's just beautiful, like this shining green egg looking thing. People are like, what is that? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's my smoker grill.
I recently got a Blackstone. I'm into the Blackstone right now.
That's why I think I have the patience for the Big Green Egg, because I have the Blackstone and I cook probably 70% of everything on that. Wow. And then it's only I have my special things that I cook, whether it's like tri-tip, I smoke a brisket or pork butts, and this turkey thing. And then the other thing I do during the next holiday, not Christmas, but Easter, is you get a smoked ham, spiral cut ham from like Costco. Yeah. And then, do you know Meat Church?
I heard it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, they make these rubs, and I think they're down in Texas.
Yeah.
They make this one rub called like honey butter or something like that, and you take this spiral cut ham, and with those, they're already pre-cooked, so all you need to do is bring them up to 160 degrees. And so typically people just put them in the oven, foil it, and then they use that sauce that comes with it. It's like you kind of got to melt down the clove and sugar and all that stuff. And there's a place for that, and I like that. I don't hate it. But if you douse this thing, the spiral cut ham, in this honey butt rub, and then put it on the smoker to reheat it to 160, it is like it'll just take you to another place.
Man, you already have. I'm so hungry right now. We might just have to cut this
Everyone
off.
who's listening is like, when are you going to talk about business and the marketing agencies?
Keep going.
Yeah. So, anyways, I got my system. But the Blackstone. So, did you just get one recently, or what?
Yeah, a couple months ago. So I haven't had it too long yet. So it's a work in progress.
How big are we talking? Like 28, 36?
Oh, gosh, I don't.
How many burners? 3 burners? 4 burners?
I think at least 4, maybe 6. Is it?
Okay. Okay. So a decent sized one. You got a good one.
Yeah. It's good. It's as much as I need. I can say that much.
Yeah. Right. I mean, ours is a 4 burner, and I can cook like a whole thing of fajitas out there. Mm-hmm. My favorite thing to do on it is bacon, because you can put a ton of bacon and then it's no mess. You just scrape that into the back corner and it all cleans up real easy, opposed to like trying to do it on the stove or putting in the oven. It seems like bacon is always popping and greasing everywhere. And I can cook like 2-3 pounds out there on the Blackstone.
My kids, so I think I did chicken fried rice, and this was in the middle of summer in Texas, or it was like 100 degrees out, and so I'm literally just a sweat pouring over me as I'm trying to do this, and then I get it all prepared and I take it inside, and then I gotta kind of new to it, so I was like, I don't know this whole cleanup process. I'm gonna go do this now. So my whole family just sitting there in the dining room eating while I'm still like cleaning the grill and still burning and sweating over everything. So it's an experience unto itself. I'll say that much.
Yeah. And I think if you enjoy cooking, it's like a labor of love, It's like, all right, I want to clean my griddle off and I want to season it and make sure that it's ready for the next, cook. So, but yeah, we do. I like burgers on there because I'm a big fan of the smash burgers. So like you can get that nice crusty burger on the flat top. And then, the other thing I started doing when I don't want to do the green egg for steaks is I just turn that thing to 100 and then do my steaks right on the flat top, and it has the best crusts, and it's amazing. I gotta
try this, because I guess it's essentially at that point it's just doing it like in the same way you do in a cast iron pan, which I hear is a pretty effective method for steak making.
100%. So then you just do a little bit of oil and butter, and then put that thing down and smash it so that it gets all contact on the griddle, and then boom, you're getting the best steaks.
All right. I'm done with the podcast now.
You're like, I'm gonna go to Piggly Wiggly's
Yep.
and get myself some steaks.
100%. That is what's for dinner tonight. There is no arguing about where we're gonna eat tonight. I'm getting some steaks and doing it on the Blackstone.
All right. Well, hopefully, if you've listened this far, you're ready to really get some knowledge bombs dropped into your face. So, Russel, I would love for you to share a little bit about your story. I mean, you have the classic entrepreneur story, you know, where you're like delivering newspapers as a kid, which no one will ever have that experience like we had to. I remember my dad delivered papers and he would get me up at like 3 or 4 in the morning to like go with him. And I'm like, what? This is your job. Like, you know, he's trying to make an extra buck when I was a little kid, you know, to keep the lights on. Yeah. And I remember us getting up and like driving down to the distribution center. And then, you know, he's like putting the thing and then I'm sitting there just miserable. But I think it builds a lot of character and it gives you this sense of ownership of like doing something, because it was like, I think he got paid like per paper that he put out, you know, so it was kind of like the more that he could do, the more money he could make. So it kind of plants that seed of success, which one of the things I always tell people about being an entrepreneur, it's like, the greatest thing about it is the autonomy, freedom, and then the limitless of potential. Like, I either fail because I'm not doing my job, or I'm succeeding because I'm working hard and I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do. So,
yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like I could, you know, write a book on just using my newspaper journey. And I mean, it was pure just child, albeit slave labor a little bit, and
25 cents an hour.
Yeah, right. And to the point, it's brutal. 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and we did ours in the afternoon. So I'd come home after school, and they'd deliver the papers to my house. I'd have to roll them up, stuff them in the bag, and some days weren't too bad, but then some days we're talking big, thick, massive Sunday papers.
Oh, yeah.
Ride my bike. I mean, we're talking maybe, I don't know how much, maybe 30 pounds on my side while trying to offset that riding a bike. And not the greatest part of town either. So going back to all the challenges that, you know, came from the paper route, there were houses I was scared to collect from. Like, they get a free paper. And so, I mean, I don't joke. I think I might netted $1 an hour for all the work. And Monday through Friday, or Monday through Saturday, nonstop, rain.
And this is Missouri, right?
Yeah, in Missouri. So
yeah,
snow,
so you're like humid, bugs, hot.
Doesn't matter. Snow, it could be 2 feet of snow. I think maybe like one time in a couple years did they actually say, you know what, you don't have to deliver today. The weather is
too crazy.
It's 3 feet of snow. We're going to let you off for a day. It was crazy. It's really sad they don't have this anymore for kids to experience some of the hardship.
My kids still do a lemonade stand from time to time. They're getting a little bit too old for that, but when they were younger, they were like, hey, let's do a lemonade stand. And, you know, I thought that was good. They'd like work together and they made signs and they'd stand out there and try to scam neighbors out of 50 cents. You know,
it's an important part of life. You got to learn how to. I mean, I'll even say you got to learn how to scam a little bit. I think
that's right. There's an element, right? Yes. It's like, all right, how do I talk people and convince them that my dirty hands didn't go into this you know, jar to like make this lemonade?
Yeah, yeah. And they're taking away fundraisers from schools. Like, no, they get out there and knock on doors. And
yes, exactly. That kind of stuff builds character. It's like, go sell the candy bar. Go like have people buy Krispy Kreme. You know, gift certificates. I think my son recently, he's a junior in high school. He's 16. He'll be 17 soon. But he was telling me that they have personal finance now. And I was like, oh, that's great. Because when I was coming up, we had home ec was like one of the only things. I don't know if you had home ec where it's like they teach you some basic skills of like, hey, this is how you make a pancake, you know, and just some basic things. But especially for math and some other things in school that I feel that most people don't use in their day-to-day life. But personal finance is like one of the things that you should be learning. So I was happy to hear that they at least do have something like There's that, hope. You know, personal finance. Yeah. Because how old are your kids?
I got old ones. I got a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old. So
okay. Yeah. So you're empty nester ish, unless they're both hanging out still, because now it's acceptable up to 30.
Yeah, commutes for school. But I'm mostly she's good about sticking to herself, so we live a pretty autonomous life at this point, which is interesting. It's an interesting time, I'll say that much.
Well, because a lot of times our lives are really wrapped up in doing stuff with the kids. I mean, what kind of entrepreneur were you? And I want to get a little bit more into that backstory, because you did the military thing. You wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force, and you did that whole thing, and then you're like, that's not for me. And then you went into business with was it your cousin or your brother?
Brother-in-law, actually. Yeah.
Okay, your brother-in-law, right? Okay, yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as far as your business journey. And I have a few questions around starting a business with a family member and a partner. Like earlier on, I knew that I couldn't have a partner. It was like one of those things where it's like, I need to be able to make 100% of the decisions, because I just want this to be on me. I don't want to have any excuses or be able to. And earlier on, I was the creative one. So I was like one doing all the work. And I had a few people that were trying to do business or be partners. And I was like, why am I giving you 50% of this stuff when I'm doing most of this, the things that are generating the income? And so I want to talk a little bit about your journey in that. But I'm curious about you as an entrepreneur. Obviously, a lot of work goes into starting a business and running a business. And a lot of people get caught up in neglecting their family. I've seen so many marriages completely dashed on the rocks because business just tore them apart. Finances got hard, and all the hours and things like that got put into the business took away the time that was supposed to be dedicated to the family. How are you? I mean, looking back, now your kids are older. I mean, did you really try to protect that time and be present and take advantage of being, your own boss?
Yeah. Yes and no. I think I definitely, you could say good or downside, right? I started a family relatively young, and which has some pros and cons to the end of the day, but some of the con side, right? You're just in that career building, skill building, figuring your own self out phase, but also trying to raise a family. And so I think in the early years, the startup years, I didn't know anything about technology, websites building. So that was a whole mountain to climb itself. And I really didn't know anything about business at that point, right? I dabbled and sold some stuff over the years, and I had some few ventures before that, but nothing even close to serious. So there was just a huge uphill battle and just but I had a lot of ambition. So I wasn't like, let's take this slow. So kind of really lighting the fires and trying to move way quicker than we probably should have. So I only knew to throw time at it, unfortunately. And I'd say in some of those younger formative years, I think I spent too much time, honestly. But it did, once we kind of got past through some of those hurdles, that was when I felt like, okay, I can take a step back now. I don't need to be throwing time, and I need to start setting some of those boundaries when just things weren't quite as painful, and did get a lot of that autonomy where I could cut off and, coached all my kids' sports. And so all that to net out is say not at first, but I eventually figured out, and that was always ended up being the great thing, is I could be at anything eventually that I wanted to be at, and making that a priority.
Yeah. When I look back on my seasons, I one of the things I think that we did well, one, I have an amazing wife who is very supportive, and she stayed home full time with the kids. So
I had that as well.
We didn't have dual income or anything like that. It was like it was all on me to kind of grind and build this thing. But looking back, I think one of the things we did well, and when I actually think about it, I'm like, this is the best strategy or technique. And I could be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong. Or if you're listening to this, you're like, you're an idiot. No, that's not true. But as a child, we view our lives in these major snapshots, right? It's like you don't remember the day-to-day or the details of all these little things, but you kind of remember, I remember going to my grandma's house on Christmas Eve, and I remember doing an Easter egg hunt, in our backyard or through the house when it was snowing. And like there's all these little snapshots, right, that like compiled into, decent memories and whatnot. And so one of the things that we kind of always try to do is really be intentional with our time as a family, like whether that's like family movie night or doing road trips or going places, visiting, grandma, grandpa, or whatever. And I feel like we did a really good job of doing those things, because on the day-to-day, I was extremely like busy or heads down, and my wife was really great about, I'd just tell her like, hey, like this project needs to get done, and I'm probably going to be up till 2 a.m. Like, don't bother me for dinner, and I'm probably not going to come to bed when you're going to go to sleep, So it was kind of like I would in the beginning, I wasn't great at communicating those things, but as I understood, like, okay, this is actually what I need. I just need you to leave me alone. And like, if you're cool with me communicating that to you, then I think we're going to all be good and this will work out, you know?
Yeah, that expectations laying out, right? I think just being younger I'd probably the same bucket. I did not do great at that earlier as well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my wife, and God bless her for staying home and putting up with me in the same similar situation of just, I could have done a lot better at saying, hey, this is what, either don't expect me at all, or versus always trying to please and really probably just, and ultimately disappointing by trying to please and saying, well, I'll be home at 6. Well, it's 7. Oh, crap, I'll be home at 8. Well, it's 9.
Oh man, how many nights have I done that? Like text like, hey, I'm on my way home. And then it's like, an email comes through or something like that. And I'm like, oh wait, I can't leave yet. And then it's, we definitely, I remember a lot of, heated discussions, I'll call them,
nice
about, not being home for dinner, like when I said I was going to be home or things like that. So I think if you can learn anything earlier on, it is setting the expectation and just communicating. Because there's definitely that season of where you kind of have to grind, and I even think now there's these ebbs and flows of, all right, this is very important that I focus in on this thing, and I'm going to have to neglect or garner more of my time that I'd spend with the family so I can focus on this thing. And if I communicate that to everybody, I think that works out. When we were moving a couple years ago, we moved and, I always try not to be on my phone around my kids constantly. And when we were moving, we were doing a lot. Like we were GCing it, so we were managing a plumber and a electrician and all these different contractors to come in and do certain things. And then we're also, because we were remodeling this house, so then it's like, okay, I'm always looking for like lighting fixtures or a new oven or stove or whatever it is. And so we were just on our phones a lot, and I just wanted to tell my kids like, hey, I just want to let you guys know like that we're on our phones a lot right now because we're trying to do all these things. And so I don't want you to feel like, oh, we're like neglecting you or we're being obsessed with our devices. It's just that like we're trying to hyper focus on getting this project done.
I love that thought. I mean, right, to the point, err on the side of over communication, what you're doing it, why you're doing it. And even, on the podcast I've heard some really cool stories lately, people that kind of grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and it's almost even that notion of kind of bringing others along in that journey. So they're not just making their own assumptions about what you're doing and why you're doing it, but one in particular, this guy was saying right at the family dinner table, his dad, it was a legacy generational business. And his dad would ask questions like, hey, got this situation, this employee did this, what do you think I should do? And this kid's 8 years old, but it just brings them along and lets them see some of those things, right? Creates some empathy probably to some degree of, oh, this is the thing that dad's doing or mom's doing. And I can, and I'm getting to participate in that little bit, give some input along that process. And it's like, I wish I would have done a lot more of that, of just kind of, like you're saying, over communicating and then just bring him along into some of the challenges and things that we were facing as a business. If I time machine, that is what I would do.
Well, now you coach people and you help them hopefully see these kind of things right before it gets too late, or maybe you try to help them repair the damage that's already been done.
That's half the battle.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you started your web development company with your brother-in-law.
Yes.
And you had no idea how to code or design or do anything.
Yeah. Literally anything.
So why did he go into business with you?
I mean, we were really close. So I was a best man in his wedding, and we had connected really, really well. Spent a lot of time together, and we both just really had that entrepreneurial ambition, and we had explored. So our first business before we even did that was we built a wedding website similar to the not.com, kind of a whole thing, wedding planning type website. And that's really where he learned to cut his teeth in terms of development. And then I kind of just did all the other things that aren't development in that business, and kind of, he worked at an agency, and we'd kind of hacked about it. He's like, hey man, I think I could sell some websites and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know anything about that. So I kind of just blow it off. And then, I don't know, there's probably just that moment of frustration at one time, and just like, you know what? I had some trouble when I got out of the military, just finding some good employment that could sustain my family. So I was probably kind of hitting I don't know if rock bottom is the word, but just anything can be better than this. So So it kind of was like an F it, let's do it. And I'll figure it out along the way, which kind of a little bit my personality. And so we just had a good rapport, and I could focus on sales and project management and a lot of things that maybe more came natural, organizational skills, and learned enough certainly to be dangerous by the trials by fire on just all the technicalities of that type of work. But the one thing I always say is it did help. Honestly, because I couldn't do the work, I did have to rely on people, systems, processes, building a good team, managing well, because I couldn't ever just rely on my own ability to jump in and do things. So, while painful probably in the early days because I couldn't do that, it probably helped in the long run that I had to rely on others and make that work.
Yeah. So he was working at an agency doing web development and things like that. And then you guys are sitting there eating a Whataburger, being like, you know what? We should do our own thing. Did you guys get a loan? How did you fund things like starting out?
I always say this is the good and downside of starting an agency is you can do it with next to nothing. As long as you've got a computer, you can start an agency. No, the awesome thing was, I think it was awesome, is the company he worked for, it was a relatively small agency in Dallas, but they ranked really well for a lot of web design terms. So I think they just got a crap ton of leads all day long, but they ended up creating like a portal where you could go in and basically buy these leads that they didn't want. So we actually just swiped a credit. So our loan was a $500 credit card swipe to start buying these leads. Yeah. And the funnier part about that is he didn't want, right? He kind of felt that was a conflict of interest. So he didn't want them knowing that he was part of that. So we did this whole thing where sometimes he would call, but use my name. So we created there was 2 versions of Russell, or we also created this entire new persona that he had, this fake name and persona, just so we could obfuscate all this, which gets to a whole slew of challenges later when someone's calling on the phone, they're saying Russell, and I'm like, yeah, this is him. Like, you don't sound like Russell. It's like, oh, sorry, you mean the other.
Like, I had a cold last time I talked to you.
Yeah, we had to do some unraveling, and to the point, the persona that we had created for his alternative. We had a client that was like, hey, I want to come visit you guys. And we're like, oh crap. How are they going to meet this person? So we didn't kill him off, but we had to remove that person from the company before he showed up. And I think he kind of saw through the ruse, but never called us out on it. It was some funny, stupid stuff.
Yeah, but it's like you do what you got to do. I mean, when I first started out, I had another company called Blue Ring Media. That was my LLC, and we still are Blue Ring Media. I started it back in 2007, and that's where I was just doing my side hustle, nights and weekends, doing photos and video, like whatever I could do to kind of make a buck on the side. And then when my company kind of it didn't necessarily get acquired, but I went to go work for somebody and kind of closed all the side hustle thing I was doing down and brought everything that I had into that company I was the director of creative media. And, but it was one of those things where it's like, okay, when I got laid off, and I had already in 2015 had decided on Brand Viva, like, okay, I think I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to leave my job and do my own thing, but I'm going to wait till I have enough money and security and like a nice cushion in the bank account before I take the leap. And then I got laid off the first week of January of 2016. So I'm like, all right, we're doing this, So, but I remember earlier on, it was like one of those things where it was like my domain was busted, and so like emails would be coming from Blue Ring Media, and they're like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, it's like this complicated thing. You're always trying to like massage things as you're figuring stuff out, So you kind of got to be scrappy sometimes and just make things work. And then again, and maybe this is a fault of my own, is of trying to always appear bigger than we are. A lot of times as agencies, you start off as just a solopreneur, and then you're like, oh yeah, me and my team. And it's just like you, and maybe you hire your friend on the side,
Yeah. My team is my dog and my cat and the rat that runs around the office every now and then. Yeah, I totally
exactly. So okay, so you had a source of leads. I mean, that was really the start of it.
Yeah.
Was a source of leads. So that's great. So then now you could start calling on these leads and picking up jobs here and there.
Yeah.
How did you guys decide how to price your services? How did you guys decide how to split the money between the two of you? If, how did some of that mechanics work?
I mean, for better or worse, right? I think just out of the gate, everything was just 50-50. And that really lasted until we actually ended up selling the business. I'll share, this is how our pricing went, because I think it was our 10th year anniversary. I did a little fun game with the team and basically said, guess the price. And I basically pulled up a bunch of websites that we did in the early days and talked a little bit about, what we did for them, and then had them guess the price. Man, they couldn't, right. I'd talk about like the most complicated, intricate development setup, e-commerce, all this stuff. And they'd be like, all right, $50,000. And I'd be like, 500. and then I'd talk about some, just a quick little brochure site or something like that. 25,000. People just by the end of it, they're like, screw it. We don't know what you guys were doing, charging or otherwise. And so all that to say, we were just all over the place because of our lead stream wasn't as all that we could purchase. We were just selling. We were selling. And everything.
Earlier on, you're like, what's the value to this person? Is the value $500 or is the value $20,000
to do whatever they want us to do?
Sold.
That's what it was, hands down. It was terrible. But we didn't know any better, so that's what we did.
But that's really how a lot of us get started. It's the thing of, I need to make money. And right now I have more time than I do money, so I'm willing to trade that time for the money. And but I do think that's one of the bigger struggles that most people have is that pricing, figuring out their offering, figuring out what the value is for the thing that they're serving. Because again, it is all over the board where it's like, okay, well, someone would do this video for $1,500 or they would do it for $30,000. And how do I price myself in order to make the most for the agency and provide a good value back to my client? So it is what it is. And if you can figure out how to price yourself and be good at it earlier on, then you can, be successful. But a lot of times when earlier on, you kind of need, I know for me, sometimes when something was cheaper and I was still learning how to do things, it was like, well, you kind of get what you pay for.
Yeah.
It's like, it took me a really long time to do this. Yeah. And, but I learned a lot by doing it, so.
Yeah. I never know, right. If I wrote a book and talked about these things, like, how much of it we just got to go through and go through that school of hard knocks on our own just to really appreciate being on the other side of it. One of the things I do talk to people a lot is don't build to the price. Create your price, whatever you think it should be, and see if, focus on that quality and that result. And then over time, you can figure out the mechanisms of how you make sure you do that profitably. But you're going to be all over the place if you're, well, I sold this for $5,000, so I'm going to try to do it in $5,000. And I sold this for $25,000, so I'm going to try to do it. Like that's a tough game to play into itself and try to scale yourself up and down relative to what you were able to sell it at. So sell your price, create your price, be confident in your price. And if that doesn't work, then make the price what it needs to be to do the quality of work you feel like you want to do or want to put out in the market.
Yeah. So typically the next hurdle that people have once they start a business is growing the business.
Yeah,
and
that damn growth.
That darn growth is killing me. Yeah. I remember I hired my first W-2 employee in 2019, and it was like I was just conflicted. And a good buddy of mine, actually the co-host of this podcast, Ben, who's might be in Morocco or Spain or Ireland or Asia somewhere. I'd have lots of conversations about the pros and cons of bringing somebody in full time and like having to like start to run payroll and like all these other it was like very stressful. I remember. And so what was that? How long did it take before you kind of hit that first like bump of, okay, now we're going to start hiring people and having a team? Because now you got to think about, work-life balance and culture and all these other aspects that go into growing a company.
Wouldn't it be nice if I had thought about all of those things before I started hiring? Again, I always have to tell clients, like, look, you don't know how bad we were before we got, where I'd say some good and some success or whatever. Like we were just, and so these are things I did not think about, right? And sometimes folks I talk to around this challenge, but it's like, oh, we got a lot of work.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, we hire somebody. Yeah, I want to be a good manager, person, or whatever, but I didn't know anything about culture and how you do that meaningfully. And I kind of just thought you pay someone and they show up and they do really good work, and then that's all that matters at the end of the day. So I didn't learn that lesson until things were just about bottomed out in the business, and we were just probably the a mailman's flat tire away from not getting the check when we needed and just having to shut the whole thing down. It was a grisly learning curve in the School of Hard Knocks in that front, I will say.
Now, was that because of you weren't really thinking about your profit and loss, or like really, like what was it that you just blindly went into being like, oh, let's hire some people and do this, and not really thinking of the consequences of that, or like the reoccurring revenue that you would have to be generating in order to like constantly be running that payroll?
Yeah, gosh, man, that's really great question. You know, I think there was just a mentality. Again, I was pretty, I was 25 when I started the agency and right, all coming up in the world, but it was just more is more, right? Sell more, do more, work harder, throw more hours at it. That's how you have success and growth. And going back to what I was saying is just, I just assumed everyone would want to do that too, because that was my approach and mindset. And just really didn't have the deep thoughts about, hey, let's work smarter, not harder. And so it wasn't until, we got to coach ourselves that I think kind of started to open my eyes into, I knew there was a better way, but I just didn't even know where to go in that process. But then just started reading and I just said, I've got to learn more about how to do this whole thing better. And that journey unto itself certainly was helpful to kind of break through all those really bad practices I was doing.
What would you say were some of the things that you read, or when you started to kind of do some of that self-reflection, that meant a lot to you or like stood out to you?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I would say books about just how to be a better manager. There was nothing really per se that I can think back like, oh, that was really great, but just little tips and tricks there.
How fast did you grow? Like, went from the two of you guys to 3, 4, or how quickly did you guys?
So we probably got to about $1 million in revenue, and I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 team members around that time frame within 2 years.
Okay, wow. So that's very quick.
Yeah, I would say in the big scheme of the world, what I see out there even today.
But your monthly nut's also massive too. If you have that many, like, your payroll and I'm just thinking like, I don't know what the number is. I think
we're
I've heard
profitable. I saw that every dollar we were making was going right back out the door.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
There's no profit in this $1 million at all. And we paid ourselves an okay salary for the time. I mean, we weren't making bank, but we weren't starving either.
But when you're young, it's like, I can live off
gosh,
less.
I tell folks all the time. I
think we talked about that last time.
Did we?
It was like, man, I remember when I got a job making $38,000 a year, and I was like so excited.
And just the frugality. I mean, I remember like going on a trip, like a cross country trip for like $200 in my pocket. Like, man, if I could live like that again, I'd be a king.
That's right.
And so anyway, just picking up nuggets here and there. I mean, right, I think a good one, if you talk about fundamental practices, is an age-old classic like E-Myth. And then I started reading, I was thinking about this the other day. So David Baker, I think, is somewhat decently well known today in the agency space, is kind of a guru, and started reading his white papers and, just learning about this agency space that I really knew nothing about, didn't have experience about. Even my business partner, he worked for an agency for 6 months. So we didn't really have, and you're talking about the wild, wild west of the web period. Nobody knew how to do this intelligently from a service perspective back then. We were copying from all the wrong places back then before we had real agile and iterative and all the tools that we have today that, help make this work process easier. So it was just picking up nuggets everywhere I could.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like when I was starting out, I was very, constantly reading books, listening to books, Audible was like, the E-Myth and, Start with Why. And
That's a good one. Yeah. Start with why
Yeah.
is a great concept.
The Road Less Stupid is great. I don't know if you've read that one
I
by
have not
Keith
read that
Cunningham.
one.
Oh, you should read that one. It's a
Keith
great book.
I've read some of the Keith Cunningham's other stuff. I've not
okay.
read that one.
Yeah, The
he's
Road Less
funny.
Stupid is yeah, and he talks a lot about thinking time and like spending, focused time just thinking, not having any distractions and whatnot, and but yeah, I think that's important to constantly be learning and inspiring yourself to keep moving forward and growing. Because a lot of times you get stuck in the weeds of things, and then you're just too exhausted to do anything, and then you start to forget about your self-care and even your inspiration. There was always the next nugget of like, oh, you know what? I think I could do that. Or that's a very interesting way of thinking about it. Maybe I needed to grow in that area. And so I think there's an element of, if you can constantly be learning and inspiring yourself, that helps kind of that process of pushing you forward and pulling you up into the next, level.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing you shared there. I mean, I think that is so true. And sometimes I probably even forget this today of, right. Your success is relative to your pace of learning and how much you can take in and take inspiration, kind of like you're saying, from not just even the agency space, and not to say that's not really good to look at how other people are doing things, but all over the place in business. And so your pace of learning is very integral to your success.
Yeah.
I would definitely double stamp that.
Yeah. All right. Double, triple stamp.
Yes. What's that? Harry Lloyd.
Yeah. You can't triple stamp a double stamp.
There we go. Yeah.
So then what was the defining moment of where you looked at your partner and you said, crap, what are we going to do? What do we do?
Like there is and isn't that defining moment, but a story I tell a lot is it was true, that I think really allowed this to occur. So, right, this is probably what year would this have been? Probably near into 2010. I mean, this is what we're saying, where nobody liked us. Our team didn't like us. Our clients didn't really like us that much. And we'd had some success, but we're kind of one of those companies like, you guys do good work, but you suck at the process. Like it was kind of like, you could probably say the feedback. And so, that certainly didn't help the team internally. So anywho, we landed this massive project. Don't ask me how we landed this thing, but we're talking near $1 million project for a university down here. And it was just this massive project. And then I was like, oh my gosh, we cannot do this thing. This is we are going to screw this up, get sued our socks off, and probably end up in prison. I don't know. I was doomsdaying this whole thing. And so we kind of started for about a month into it and just confirmed that, like, oh my gosh, we don't know what we're doing. We are not capable of this. So I had a call with my business partner. It was just like, hey man, we can't do this. And so we made this decision. All right, fine. We'll go in and tell them we can't do it. And then calls me a couple hours like, are we going to survive if we don't do this? And I was like, I don't know, but we're going to be in prison if we do it. So take your pick.
That's right.
But
do you want your roommate to be your wife or Billy?
Yeah, that's true. That was the real decision we were making there. That's so true. Anyhow, we ended up saying, like, I guess we've got to do this. And so the good of it was we had nothing left at this point. We had no other clients. So it was pretty much all hands on deck to just do this one project. And it took about a year, but that year gave us that runway to kind of reassess ourselves, took away just all that clutter and all the things that were going on, and just allowed us to really focus and hone ourselves, and just gave us a real sense of who we were on the other side of that, what kind of work we wanted to do, what we needed to start to saying no to, the value and the importance of having a good team and how we go about that work we do, and just kind of took that year to put into practice what I think a lot of that learning had been up to at that point. And so on the other side of that, the work itself and our new approach just everything we got kind of after that looked good. We got to it in a decently healthily manner. Our process had vastly improved in terms of our client experience. So it really kind of, you could say in some ways, that ability, that space to reset allowed us to put in practice so many things that maybe if we still could keep churning clients that we shouldn't have been working on, we would have never gotten that space to do that.
What were those key, like what were the key things that were broken that you were able to fix that helped you guys kind of keep going and level up?
I mean, so many things, right? How many hours do you want to chat through this? Because there was a lot broken, but I think, again, going back to just bad practices, I didn't know how you find good talent, and I didn't know how to assess good talent. Again, I think I had this mindset of anyone decently intelligent and capable can do a good job at something. Again, that was my approach. And so it was learning at what good talent looks like and holding out for that, right? Even prior to that, our interview process, well, 3 people applied, so pick the best of 3. And that's who we hired.
That is so hard. That's really one of the hardest things. And you hear that a lot in the entrepreneur circles where it's like, hire quick or, hire slow and fire quick.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, because I know that we've been in that trap too, where it's like, man, we really need someone to fill this role, to do this thing that we just closed the deal on, and I got to bring somebody in, full time to do that. And then it's like you do a couple interviews, a phone interview, they come in, you meet them, like, yeah, they're good enough,
Yeah.
And then it's like the red flags start happening 2, 3, 4 weeks into them working, and then you're like, and then you feel bad, like, oh, maybe I just didn't onboard them properly and like set a good expectations, and you let it drag out, and
100%.
Then it's just like, I think I need to fire them.
Yeah. Is it you or is it me? Well, I think that was even a bad thought process too. Is I also call it a strength, call it a weakness, is that responsibility is one of my strengths finder strengths, and everything that was always going wrong, I was taking responsibility for. So even when people were outright screwing up, I'd be like, okay, what do I need to do better? What can I, and it was never, what do I need to do to make them better? Or maybe to your point, make them not here at all. And so, but ultimately that understanding of what it actually looks like for someone that's really good at their craft and their role, and then just that's the new standard, and I never go back. And that was a strong precedent. And right, all things, how do you find them? How do you assess them? And all things. So that just that learning curve is a continuous evolution. But it goes back to then, the other part I think I might have mentioned earlier is just getting really specific about who our ideal client is, how we serve them, and then saying no to everything else. So we cut out, we were working in all kinds of technologies. The scale and size of projects was all over the place. So we just said, nope, here's the range. Here's what kind of technology we're going to use. Here's the quality level that we're going to shoot for. So even if we're not going to sell this littler stuff more, we really wanted to focus on more of a high-end enterprise level. So it's like a lot of folks I talk to that get to, it's what we started saying no to, not even as much as what we started saying yes to. So that quality, that focus on team and how we went about the work, that would be probably I'll say the third thing that was really important. That is really innovating how we went about the work we did. This was still in the early days when kind of bringing an agile methodology to the agency world, and kind of the web creation process was in its infancy. But how do we work really good as a team versus an isolationist approach, which we had before, and just those kind of questions and those focus answered a billion little things that really formed our process and the ways we went about things. But yeah, how do you find good talent? How do you create an environment where they can thrive? And how do you really innovate how you get work done and the quality level that you're trying to achieve would be I'd say the overarching things.
Yeah. And then what about you individually and your partner, I guess? I'm assuming you're still friends with your partner?
I am. Yes.
He's
still my brother
at Thanksgiving?
Yes. He was at Thanksgiving last Thursday.
Okay, nice. When I started Brand Viva, it wasn't because I was passionate about the thing that I was doing. It wasn't like, I just want to make the best films ever and I want to take the most amazing photo in the world. I think there's kind of creatives on two sides of those things, where it's like one wants to be an excellent at their craft and they want to do the greatest. And then the other person, and I think I fall into this category, is more of like, I really want the autonomy and freedom and limitless potential to make an earning of whatever I want. I don't want to be limited by the guy who says, well, HR says we only have $55,000 this year. It's It's like, okay. But for you, where did you find your passion to kind of continue on and keep moving forward? Because it sounds like you weren't the person who was like, I want to learn how to code so well that I can make, Dreamweaver cry.
That is the greatest line I may have ever heard in my life. Make Dreamweaver cry. Oh, that's great. I don't even know where to go from that.
People don't even know what Dreamweaver is. Just you and I do, okay? Because we're old guys.
No, geez, now that's making me feel worse. Yeah,
because don't you think you need something to keep moving you forward?
You
and you need to be
absolutely do.
passionate about something. You need to have purpose, and you need to have direction to wake up every day and go forward. So, I mean, what are you telling people, or how are you getting to that for people?
Yeah. So the way I kind of, and I think this is far more hindsight than me having these epiphanies in the moment back then. But, this idea that we're going to fight hard for survival. We're going to wake out of bed. If we know we got to survive that day, we're going to do whatever we need to do, hustle, grind it out, and do what we need to survive. But then kind of once we get to not necessarily even comfortability, but where we don't have to worry about survival anymore, it's hard to get motivated, and I think probably even in my young self, it's like, well, I'm doing business so I can have millions of dollars someday. And when you kind of find out that's a lot farther off in the distance than you would have initially dreamed, it's like, well, crap, do I really want to bust my butt today because of something that really seems so far away anyway? Is it really going to move the needle and make a difference? I don't know. So that was a big, I guess maybe a fourth element, going back to what is finding that sense of purpose that did not have anything to do with money. And I think that's ends up being a challenge, right? So many folks get into an agency business just for income replacement or right, to just make a certain amount of money to feed their family. And then they can end up in some bad spots because they didn't really think about to your point of what is my purpose? What is the value I'm trying to create into the world? And that just really, I hammer it home so often how important that is, because it is that thing that is going to get us out of bed in the morning and fight through some of the challenges that are inherent to creating more value than just what you need to survive. You've got to have that oomph, that goal, that or whatever. And when you start to build a team too, you have to have that, because you've got to give people a reason to also want to do more than just clock in and clock out from 9 to 5. They've got to feel like their work and their contributions are going towards something, not just another dollar for the company we're working for, or for even our company, that it's something they're passionate about as well. So you got to find what that is for your business, and not everything has to be world saving, but it does have to be something that you're truly excited about, and that generally that you can get someone else on board with as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, what you're doing with Performance Faction, right, there's an element of like, yeah, you have a business, a coaching business, and, things you need to do provide for your family. But then I do get a sense from you that you truly do enjoy, getting to know agency owners, helping them succeed, and being able to hear their stories and then kind of apply your skills and knowledge that you have developed by going before them to help them maybe miss some of those pitfalls. And grow. And then that's kind of like your meaning and purpose. Like, wow, I get fulfillment from like seeing these other people succeed.
1,000%. You couldn't have said that any better. They probably said it better than I could for myself. But it's folks like you that I want to see you be successful, because you're going to build a great place for people to work, do great work, really take care of your team. You're not just trying to exploit them and extract, the most amount of, pay them the least and get, and it's folks like you that I want to see win in this world, because that I truly believe is just going to be what makes the world a better place. And you guys, folks like you and so many other small business owners, they're the ones that are going to give way more proportion of what they get to a cause or something they believe in, that's also going to make them. So it creates just such a great fortuitous cycle of making the world a better place when small business owners succeed. So
I think
I was just saying, I work harder than I have in many, many years, but I don't feel like it at all, because that passion, that purpose. It excites me every single day to get up earlier, to do what I got to do and work later. And I don't blink an eye. And luckily I'm an empty nester too, so I can.
Yeah, look at you. You're just living that dream.
Yeah.
So you started to hit a stride. You started to grow the team. You started to focus on finding really good talent and cultivating them and making a great culture for people to show up. At what point were you like, all right, let's sell this puppy?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Like, was it a machine that was just kind of moving and then you were like, I think I'm ready to get off this ride? Or was it like, I mean, what was it? Yeah. Tell me. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. Now,
You're like, good question. I never thought about that until now.
I think back a lot, and I feel like after we started having some initial success, like, all right, I'm going to do this forever. I would never sell this thing. There's no amount of dollars you could give me, I would sell this thing. And then if I'm being 100% honest, I think we hit a period of where we kind of got lazy again. And we had actually had such great success that we were literally showing up every year and pretty much we were sold out at the beginning of the year. It was
like, we got business coming through the door. Yeah. We don't have to work as hard as that.
Yeah.
What was that? Were you making $3 million, $5 million?
So at this point, we're probably $5 million in revenue.
Okay.
We're probably leaner than we should have been, but I mean, we had a pretty small team for that size. So I want to say maybe around 16 people or so. Okay. And so profit was through the roof. So in all, transparency, right? We had a cash cow. And right, all that hard work of all those little innovations and things that we had to solve just didn't feel as important anymore, because it's like, well, start the year and we know we're going to make 5 million revenue and we're going to make X million in profit. And
the flywheel's going, it's just
all we got to do is just show up and we'll get there.
Yeah.
And so, I think a couple things end up happening, right? As I think one started realizing, oh crap, we got lazy. And I honestly probably came a little bit disenchanted. Like, I don't want to go redo everything I did. And I think that's what I kind of realized, is I would have to redo so much of that work that I'd already done. And I was just not passionate about that.
Yeah.
To that end too, I think just the risk on the table is, we'd kind of plateaued at that amount for a while. And I was just like, you know what? I think one of the reasons why we're not being as risky as we need to be or do that, because we had a cash cow and we didn't want to disrupt that income or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, we probably need, for this thing to continue in its best way possible, we need to take some of this risk off the table. So we stop managing it by our own needs and let the business run itself and the direction it needs to go. So that was a process unto itself. But fast forward, it happened. And it was like the next day was, now I can make Russell decisions and I can make the business decisions, and I don't have to convolute those as much. And it did everything, satisfied some financial goals, but it also satisfied something that I cared about and wanted to see run off on its own. I felt like I could lead that 10 times better after that.
Now, were you and your partner on the same page? It's like, or were one of you like, hey? And I guess the other question would be, is why didn't you just hire managers and then just let the thing do it, just send you a check every month?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was one of the things we stumbled a lot, and a lot of my work since has kind of shined more light on why, but I don't think we thought that could happen. I don't think we thought there was someone that could come in and run that to that level that it really did take, that it took us. And there's some fallacy in that thinking of itself, but there's also some probably challenges that existed that I didn't realize as much. Was, why is that a thing? That's not inherent reality. That's just the reality we saw. So that just didn't really seem like a feasible option. And at the time, I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready to be done working. I wanted to continue to do what I was doing. I just wanted to make sure I could do that in the best way possible for me, my family, and those side of things, but also for the sake of the business. So I'm pretty sure that's pretty much how I was looking at it back then. And I think we were on the same page. He definitely has a lot more passion for the creation side of things and the work. My passion lied solely in the people and creating a great organization in that sense. If I'm being dead set honest, I don't know if this is bad to say or not, but I didn't care about websites.
Yeah.
and that was a pain. I think that started to become more and more of a pain for me, that I'm trying to facilitate work that I'm not that passionate about.
Right. Well, so where did your role evolve throughout, your time? Like, where did you end up as, like, what were you getting paid to do?
Janitor.
Like cleaning toilets and playing cornhole.
Yeah. I did do a lot of cornhole, actually. And dart players. I became proficient, moderately, averagely proficient at several of those types of activities.
You could compete at any local pub.
Yes. Yes. I could be a good ringer. Pretty much all things behind the scenes. I would dabble in kind of the front end sales kind of things, but got to the point, because probably I was not passionate about it either, I wasn't really doing any execution. I was just kind of responsible for the overall operational aspects. Really, in my last few years in the agency, a lot of time just recruiting and kind of building our talent, making sure that culturally we were growing and fostering that talent, and just kind of our overall mechanics and structure. Call it COO or just general operations. That's really where I relegated to in the end.
And then when it came time to sell, did you just get some sort of random email or like a reach out on LinkedIn that said, "Hey, have you thought about selling your business?" You're like, "Oh, maybe I have." Or did you have like a strategic place or person that you knew that helped sell businesses? Or
we did a mix. So the whole process definitely took some time once we kind of decided, let's go do this. So we started entertaining a lot of different formats, the old tire kickers that email you. By the way, if anyone's listening, I generally hate those. They waste your time. They're just looking for a deal. If you think you have a really viable business, those aren't the people to sell to.
Yes.
Maybe 1 in 100 might be, I don't know. So all that to say, and so we started exploring a few different options. We looked at kind of some broker aspects.
Transworld.
Yeah.
Shout out to my buddy Arthur.
What's that?
I got a buddy, Arthur. He's a new friend of mine. He works for Transworld. He's talking about buying and selling businesses.
There you go. But ultimately, this is kind of what I just encourage about. There is someone that's going to like you a lot out there, and there are people that are looking for acquisitions, but again, either they're looking for a deal or they're just going to be a lot more pragmatic about how you might fit into their picture. So someone loves you a lot and someone loves you not, like anything we're selling in this world. So I always tell folks, it's just about craft your narrative on what is your angle of value, who might you be most valuable to, and go after that person. So that's what we kind of started, is putting that in the universe of, hey, we're actually not just an agency, we're a technology company, and we've got some extensive software and stuff like that that we feel like we can take to the market. So I think that narrative is what made us more attractive, and from a private equity standpoint, so that's ultimately what acquired us, because what do they want to do? They want to hit home runs. They're not just trying to bolt on a service or something like that. So that was where we were getting our lower valuations from and offers, was companies that just wanted more agency work or just a bolt on to that. So all that to say,
did you have conversations with your team members, or did you ever entertain the idea of like someone within the company could maybe buy you guys out or anything like that?
No, we kind of kept the whole process under wraps, only to ourselves. And, would that have been something I'd like to do? Probably, but I just think the level of valuation we were looking at, it just wasn't going to be possible. Really. We were more interested in selling and paying out those team members that we would have even done that. So that was the great thing of it too, is there were some new cars that weren't ours that were purchased not too long after the sale, because we were able to really pay handsomely to some people that we felt like had really contributed to our success.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then looking back, do you feel like after all it's said and done, hindsight 2020, would you do anything different?
Oh man. Would I do anything different? And
I know it's a hard question, because in my own life, I look back and I say, well, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for all the things that I went through to get to where I am. And so if I short-circuited any of those things, then I wouldn't end up here.
Yeah.
But in the same way, there maybe can be some things that you look back and say, okay, if I did this sooner, we could have shortcutted that process and I wouldn't have had to struggle for so long.
Gosh, man, that's the world's most loaded question ever. I think I come to like a lot of folks. I almost even stopped asking on my podcast because, right, I think a lot of people say things. Well, I would go tell myself this, but either one, I don't know how that would change the result.
Yeah.
Because in a completely different way than I might expect, and probably wouldn't listen to myself anyway. So, I think something that could have been. Well, this is what I tell folks that whole process of selling, it is stressful. It is as much stressful as back when I was telling the story of just how bad things were in the business and we were almost closing it. That's how stressful the whole sale process
Did it strain your relationship at all with your brother-in-law?
No, not really. If anything, honestly, it probably brought us together because I think that was a thing probably that happened, ebb and flow in the business is when our goals were more common than or not in terms of how well we sync together, but this became a common goal. So I think that strengthened it. But, I think because that process is so strenuous and because that in business was really in a critical need of that reinvestment that I talk about of going back to our roots and doing all those things, the wholesale process took our eye off that ball. So if you look at the entire history of revenue of that company, from day one till even today, for that matter, really, there is only one dip in that line of revenue, and that's the year we sold. And that's how much it takes the eye off the ball, right? 20-year history of a company or so, and the year is the year we sold. So, and all that to say, the deal was this close to also not happening. Like we were literally within like 2 weeks of when we actually closed, we had called it off and said no more. And so, right, we had not only would that have sucked for certain reasons, but right, that lack of investment period, we were in a worse place technically because we had not been investing in that sense than we were before. So I would go back and just say, look, even if you want to sell, Russell, reinvest in this business in the way you think you need to do it. And so that you're not getting to that point. And I think that's why that became so stressful is like, hey, if this doesn't happen, we're like I said, we're back to even more square whatever than we were before.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest fear that a lot of entrepreneurs have is like having to go get a job.
Yeah.
And for you, it's like, oh, we got to like go back to building this thing again.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. It's like felt like I set back 5 years and I encapsulate that advice to go back to what I tell a lot of folks is, look, always be building the business that you want to most own. And that will also be the business that someone will most want to buy. But if you're always doing that and not kind of trying to just do a business to sell or something along those lines, that you won't end up in that place where, that I felt like from that mindset and standpoint. So
then when you said that there was kind of a little bit of less than 50-50 when you guys sold the business, was that an easy conversation to have where it was like, hey, we're going to sell this and then split it 70-30 or whatever that split was? I mean, was that something that you guys were cool with? Like, I know like the band Coldplay, for instance, I think they split all their revenue 5 ways. So there's like 5 guys in the band. Yeah. And even though the main guy writes the songs and kind of brings them to the band and they all work on them, they've decided that it's going to go 5 ways. And I've heard, through interviews and things like that I've seen of them, that they just talk about how like it just makes it a non-issue.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah. Well, so we were 50-50 and pretty much always ran everything with that mindset. So, I found a more challenge in that, right, is really separating who and this is hard to do, right? Yourself as an owner and yourself as an operator. And there's a big difference between equity and what you're getting paid or what you're doing in the business from an operator. And really once I don't know, you mess with this in the earlier stages of business, but when you get more mature, right, at that separation is so, I feel like important. And the downside of that 50-50, I think far more came into kind of the management side is we didn't give either one of ourselves, kind of that extra 1% to just say who's in charge here. And so what that kind of manifests itself is, I feel like we're just able to always cancel each other out with our feet, or with, just by natural kind of how we took that 50-50 equity approach into how we ran the business. And I think also because we were brother-in-laws, and I wouldn't change this because, I think we always chose friendliness over, right, maybe some of that headbutting that we should have done, honestly, or at least for the interest of the business, never happened, and probably created some challenges for not only the business, but even, right? I think we should do this. I think we should do this. Well, we cancel each other out. So what do? I don't know. We wouldn't force that issue as much as I think we needed to.
Yeah. Well, and that, to me, it sounds like it's just very important to have those clear expectations, and then maybe be willing to give up that 1% so that you can kind of get things done, and
even again, doesn't even have to be about equity, because we never ran into like I need this power per se. It'd be more just a mutual agreement of like, all right, you're CEO, I'm COO, you set the vision, I'll follow you, and whoever that needed to be or whatever. And really more again about the operational setup and following that line agreement. So I don't know that had to play out in equity per se, but we needed to separate equity from operational.
Yeah. So then how long was it before you just were like, all right, we're going to go on some vacations and like, reset? And then how long was it before you were itching to be like, I need to start Performance Faction?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, the funny thing was,
because how long ago did you guys sell?
It says 2017. So,
okay.
Gosh, that's 7 years ago, or almost 8 years ago. God dang it.
That's crazy, right?
Man. So the funny thing is there was no time to celebrate. Like, and I kind of regret that a little. We did nothing to celebrate this. It was like the transaction happened next day, or a couple of days, we tell the team, and we had an earn out. So it was, and because of that kind of lack of investment, we're like, oh crap, if we want to maximize this earnout, we've got to get our butts going, because we're not in as good as a place as we'd have hoped we'd have been. So it was just all ground running to get to this.
So then how long did you have to stay before you could earn out?
So we had an interesting setup, is that we didn't actually have to stay one day longer. Now, we were highly incentivized to, and so there would have been stupid probably for us to just leave all that on the table. But so that really wasn't a factor in terms of having to do it. We're just highly incentivized to do it. And like I said, I still enjoyed the work per se, and wanting to try to continue to grow and be successful in the business. But, I had actually kind of a few years prior to that, I'd kind of stepped out of the business for a little bit, probably around 2013, 2014, and actually kind of started getting into coaching a little bit. That was just such a passion of mine. And I tell folks, I'm probably 2 steps removed from being a high school sports coach somewhere. If you go back up further enough in my journey, that fork in the road could have easily been something that I've always found a lot of passion in just helping others achieve their potential. So that had planted the seed, I guess you could say. So I think in the back of my mind that was always something I knew I wanted to do. But yeah, fast forward a little bit, probably pandemic time frame. I think I just kind of decided, look, I think my work here is done. I think I've added as much value as I feel like I can without, transforming myself in a way that I maybe don't want to anyway. And so it's time to move on. So spent about a year just, how do I make myself irrelevant so that people will wake up one day and like, I don't need Russell for anything.
Why is Russell still here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, you're still here. And so about the end of 2021, early 2022, and I was like, all right, I'm going to step away. I'm going to do this thing full time.
Nice.
And I mean, I will say it was far more emotional than when we announced to the team, there were tears, and I did not expect that. It was just, it's all I had really done in my life up to that point and in career, for certain. And so, but I was also passionate, excited about what I knew I was going to go on and do. What's that? Yeah. There's a quote by I think it's Ray Dalio of, I'm going to butcher this, but it's something to the effect of, hey, if you can stay on this side of the river and live a good, comfortable life, or you can cross into the jungle and the unknown and having a great life. And I feel like that was kind of the decision I was making. I could have been fine and stayed there and been comfortable forever, or I could have kind of gone off in this new adventure and really seek out my true passion.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome, man. I'm so inspired by your story, and I think that man, you have so much to offer people, and I'm excited to kind of keep following you and seeing where things go, and how you continue to enrich people's lives and change the world for better through business growth, entrepreneurship, and marketing agencies. So, well, listen, if people wanted to connect with you and get some more information about your coaching, or just
say what's up.
Say what's up. Yeah. What's the best place?
Yes. Performancefaction.com is the website right now. I've got a podcast called An Agency Story. When this launches and when I get around to it, I am trying to merge those two concepts and turn the whole business into an agency story, not only helping create great agency stories, but tell them. So that's it. I'm always down for a conversation. Love to help people. If someone's interested in coaching, I do complimentary sessions. So just would love to connect. You can even email me, Russel with 1L at performancefaction.com. Would love to hear your thoughts, goals, and dreams. And even if it's not a coaching relationship, how I can help. But man, I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity to say this, but greatest podcast host ever, Mark. Hands down, what an opportunity. Such great questions, such great insight. Thanks, you shared. It was a great pleasure and experience to be on this side of the table.
Well, we loved having you. Hey, we always like to leave people with one good thing to focus on going into the next week. So if you could say Monday morning, as a marketing agency creative, this is the thing that you should focus on to level up your business. What would that thing be for someone to start thinking about or looking into?
Well, if you don't have the purpose, I'd say hands down, decide your purpose, decide that ultimate value you want to create in the world. And if you feel like you have that, then I'll just default and say, what is the next thing that can make you provide awesome value to your most ideal client, and take that leap. And man, it's all about value creation. So you got to be pushing that value button left and right to do that. And so, what is the next best thing you can do to provide amazing value to your client?
Evaluate your value.
There you go.
There you go. Awesome. That's great advice. And I hope you guys take it. Hey, if you go to thefridayhabit.com, you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our Friday Habit system that shows you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of always in your business. You can hit us up at hello@thefridayhabit.com. You can maybe send us a voice memo or an email to let us know who you'd like us to have on the show next, or topics you'd like us to discuss. And until next time, remember, live every day like it's Friday.